Okay, so I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves as they join the presentation. So we're sharing the slides today. So it's my job to start off. My name's Jo Holliday. I'm a consultant clinical psychologist and I work in eating disorders across the lifespan. And it's a real pleasure for us to be invited today to talk about an innovative project to promote neuro-inclusive practice in the area of eating disorders. So first of all, just to start off, across clinical practice and research, there's increasing recognition of the overlap between autism and eating disorders. And this led to an initiative called PEACE, which promotes neuro-inclusive practice in this area of mental health. And it's particularly important for two reasons. So one of the things that we observe, particularly in CAN services, is that people often present with an eating disorder first before their autism is recognised. And this is particularly true of girls. Most of you all know that eating disorders are overrepresented in girls. The second thing, which is really important, is people with autism and an eating disorder have poorer outcomes and experiences of care. So in general, they find services harder to access and they may not benefit from traditional eating disorder treatments in the same way. They're more likely to have admissions to inpatient units, they're more likely to be detained under the Mental Health Act, and they're more likely to experience instances of restrictive practice. So those are all huge reasons why it's important to understand their experience and think about adaptations to services. And this project set out to develop and build bridges between areas of knowledge that sit within our systems. And this project, we hope, acts as a counterbalance to the move towards specialist pathways that can disadvantage those with overlapping needs or risks siloing staff knowledge and experience. And just to give you an idea of scale, so before we launched this project, we simply didn't know how many of the young people we're supporting in eating disorder services had symptoms or like features that might suggest that they're autistic. So we've done some kind of mapping work as part of the project. And based on that mapping work, you can see it's a really high percentage. So about 38% score above a screening threshold, which of course not all of those people will be autistic, but it gives a signal to suggest that a proportion will be. And looking at our kind of caseloads, around 46% have diagnosed or suspected autism. So we're talking about a really large number of the young people that we support. So where did the PEACE project start? And so some of you may know, and I think Debbie mentioned it earlier, the PEACE project stands for Pathway for Eating Disorders and Autism, developed from clinical experience. So this is an initiative that evolved from several years of research looking at the overlap between eating disorders and autism, observations in clinical practice, and the voice of those with lived experience of both conditions. And this initial immensely successful project focused on adult inpatients with eating disorders in the South London and Maudsley Trust, and making reasonable adjustments to care and treatment for the eating disorder, and carefully assess the impact of these. So what we learned from the London project is that many individuals experience years of treatment before their autism was recognised, and often this happened well into adulthood and before treatment was adapted to take account of their autistic needs. So in Thames Valley, we saw the opportunity with some innovation funding to extend this learning and apply the PEACE model and understanding to children and young people in a community setting. So as such, we proposed an innovative project retaining the name PEACE, but the Bob PEACE project, and to improve care pathways for children and young people with autism and eating disorders across the Bob integrated care system. And the aim of this project was to learn from those with lived experience and make existing care pathways related to eating disorders neuro-inclusive from the very beginning of someone's journey. And our hope in doing so was that we may be able to avert some of the more severe or chronic course of the illness evident in the original PEACE study, and enable young people who are autistic or possibly autistic to benefit and from eating disorder focused care and truly recover earlier in their life journey. And we hope to do that through a number of things. So you'll hear in a bit more detail about what we've done. But some of the things we set out to do was to improve identification, recognition and referral within community CAMHS of children and young people with autism or suspected autism and eating disorders. And that's from both angles, from those who might sit within the wider CAMHS system, who may sit within neurodevelopmental pathways, as well as those who already sit within the eating disorder pathways. We also want to support young people on a needs-led basis with or without an autism diagnosis, which mirrors the original London project. And we wanted to improve existing eating disorder care pathways through reasonable adjustments for autism, right the way through from early help to complex care, with the hope of improving engagement, experience and outcomes. So I'm not going to spend too long on this slide. It's a really busy slide, but we just wanted to give people who were interested a quick overview of how we've structured delivery of the Bob PEACE project. And so we wanted to capitalise on the opportunity to implement innovation and build skills and knowledge across the Bob-wide footprint, and drawing on much of the expertise that sits within our workforce and the people that we support. Alongside an embedded local offer whereby PEACE clinicians work within and support local CAMHS colleagues. So to do this, we have strategic and support roles that sit across Bob, and then we have roles that are embedded in the local teams. And you'll hear from some of my colleagues shortly. So at this one, I'll hand over to Sarah to introduce herself, and she will share one of our videos. So do you want to introduce yourself and then I'll press play?
Thanks, Jo. Yeah, you can press play. So yeah, this is a video that we've produced for our service, and this was produced with our experts by experience, and it's a really helpful way of us kind of showcasing today what the kind of reach of the PEACE pathway is. So yeah, Jo, if you play and then I'll pick it up after that.
PEACE stands for Pathway for Eating Disorders and Autism Developed from Clinical Experience. It is a service for young people, their families and professionals. PEACE supports autistic young people who are struggling with an eating disorder and receiving treatment. PEACE helps young people who have an eating disorder get information and support about autism and get referred for an autism assessment if they think they might be autistic. We know that around a third of people with an eating disorder are also thought to be or known to be autistic. So PEACE is increasing awareness and understanding of autism and making sure that care is inclusive for autistic young people who have an eating disorder. Eating disorders are very concerning, and we need to make sure all young people get treatment and support to recover from their eating disorder. We want people who support you to understand and learn more about autism. Autistic young people may experience differences in the way they perceive and interact in the world. They may have sensory processing differences and social anxiety, not knowing how to fit in, and may feel different to others. They may find eating at school hard, as well as finding food that they can tolerate. This can make eating more difficult. Their levels of distress and anxiety can increase, leading to them not eating enough. And when our bodies don't get enough food and nutrition, this can lead to eating difficulties, which can then lead to an eating disorder. So it is important that people understand autism. It can be helpful to think about autism and eating disorders like this. This is you. The eating disorder is like a black cloud that comes along and eclipses you. You are still there. Some of the challenges of being autistic, as well as all your strengths, are still there. But the eating disorder becomes the biggest thing and can hide you away. Peace aims to support people to help you to recover from your eating disorder and to thrive as an autistic person and embrace your strengths. The best interventions for understanding autism is knowledge and promoting an attitude that respects, embraces and celebrates autism. A team in London set up the Peace service for adults who had eating disorders and were also autistic, and they chose the name Peace. We have used their idea to develop a service in Berkshire, Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire, Bob for short. Some of the things we are doing are: we have set up a website. We deliver webinars to support people to better understand autism and to understand why eating disorders need to be thought about differently. We are developing resources for all the people that care for and support autistic young people. We are finding out from autistic young people with eating disorders and their families what they want us to know and what would help them. We are talking to all the people that support young people and their families and finding out what information they need. We're providing consultation to health professionals to think about autism and eating difficulties and adapting eating disorder treatment, and our team are providing some adapted interventions to families and young people to enhance their care. Welcome to the Peace community.
Thanks, Jo, for sharing. So yes, I think I forgot to tell you that I'm the lead clinician in Oxford for the Peace Pathway in Oxford, and I'm an occupational therapist by background. And part of the project is that we have some work streams, and the work stream that we're leading on in Oxford is the early help work stream, and in that I have support from the whole of our Peace team. But the kind of I also have support from dietetics, and we have an educational psychologist in our Peace Pathway, as well as some very brilliant assistant psychologists who are doing a huge amount of work, particularly around our resource development. So I just quickly wanted to highlight to you the kind of piece that we're doing around the early help work stream. This is a really big focus this year in the project. You saw in the video, it said that we've set up a website. The website's not there yet, it is in development, but the video has been produced and obviously states the website, because when it's there, then it's current. We're developing leaflets and resources, and these have come out of stakeholder engagement events where we've met with our colleagues across all the different services in social care, in across CAMS, across health, to try and understand, and across our systems, our school nurses, our schools, we're due to meet with our schools later this month, just to try and understand what resources would be helpful to people at that kind of first point where eating is becoming an issue and people are concerned about eating with the autistic young people. We have been producing a monthly newsletter, and that's particularly helpful at the moment whilst we are waiting on our website being launched. But we're really grateful to all the clinicians that have been helping us to develop leaflets and resources around all different areas of eating disorders and autism. I'm going to hand over to Kim to tell you a little bit more about some of the other things that we're doing.
Yep, so hello everyone, my name's Kim Hoffman. I am a clinical psychologist and I'm the lead for Peace within Berkshire. So this year the Peace team have hosted a series of webinars focused on topics relevant to the overlap between autism and eating disorders. And we've invited our colleagues from our neurodevelopmental teams, our eating disorder services and the different CAMS pathways to attend the webinars, which take place on a monthly basis. And the broad aim of the webinars is to really support awareness and understanding of co-occurring autism and eating disorders and to promote inclusive care and practice. So each webinar includes current thinking, research, practical guidance and a lived experience perspective. And we've been really fortunate to have experts in the field talk about their specialist areas. So back in May, we had Tony Atwood and Michelle Garnett talk about autism and girls. And later this week, we have Madeline Oakley, who's a researcher and a parent with lived experience talking about supporting families. The webinars are recorded and are currently available to watch by Oxford Health colleagues, and they're soon going to be available to watch within Berkshire Healthcare too. Next slide, please, Jay. Thank you. So it's been really important for the PEACE team to evaluate the impact of the webinars. We've had really good attendance to the webinars, between 60 and 150 people for each webinar. At the end of each webinar, we ask attendees to complete a really quick feedback form, and that's highlighted that the attendees have experienced increased confidence on the webinar topic, and 100% of the attendees have also experienced increased confidence in working with autistic people affected by eating disorders. And you can see just a small selection of some of the lovely feedback that we've received. And I think a key theme in the feedback that we've received has really been about the value of including a lived experience perspective, which really adds meaning and richness to the kind of current thinking and research and practical guidance that's shared. Thanks, Jane.
So, thank you, Kim. So we also, as part of the PEACE team, are offering consultations, and this kind of takes on three sort of different forms. One is that within being as PEACE clinicians, we are sitting within our local eating disorder team. So the three of us sit within Berkshire, Buckinghamshire, Oxfordshire, within our existing eating disorder team. So we're delivering in Oxford a group consultation to our colleagues, and then we also have the offer of individual consultations to all our CAMHS colleagues, so irrespective of teams. And then we have just launched recently a Bob-wide PEACE consultation that's to kind of think about complex cases and for us to think about that and join together as a Bob-wide service. You can see that between May 22 and this October, we've done 95 consultations, and putting that against the backdrop that we're a very small service, we're quite pleased that we have been able to achieve that, and 14 different CAMHS teams are represented in that. So that's kind of giving you that sense of the reach that we have been able to have into our local CAMHS teams, be that in the getting more help parts of our CAMHS teams. It's really helpful that the consultation also allows the teams to come together and have a specific focus around considering autism, and that's been appreciated quite a lot. We've seen some really nice feedback, and you'll see just one example of feedback here about the fact that through consultation we're able to think a lot about reasonable adjustments, going more slowly in therapeutic interventions, and just thinking about what's right for that young person. I think, thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. So yes, in addition to consultations, the PEACE team also have some dedicated capacity to offer more intensive or direct support for autistic young people, or possibly autistic young people with more complex experiences of eating disorders. So this might be young people who are really struggling to engage, or where they're presenting with significant risks with eating disorder and perhaps needing or at risk of needing hospital care. So the work's included PEACE offering further assessment and formulation and care planning with young people and families, PEACE attending professional meetings, including CETRs and LEAP meetings. And we've also worked directly with a small number of young people and families, offering evidence-based interventions. And when helpful, we've also contributed to referral to autism assessment teams and then other services. And again, the PEACE team have received really positive feedback from young people and families who've really benefited from the support. Yeah, so this year the Peace team have been working hard to develop low intensity interventions also, and these are designed to support the well-being of autistic young people affected by eating disorders. And they're also designed to complement and be offered alongside eating disorder treatment. So there's 5 different modules. There's one on sensory well-being, eating difficulties and autism, emotional toolkit, coping with anxiety and finding connections. And the interventions are facilitated by a Peace assistant psychologist with supervision, and they typically involve working through workbooks that are based on evidence-based principles. And they can be adapted and tailored with respect to the preferences and the needs of the young person. And so, yeah, that might be communication preferences or learning preferences. Usually what happens at the beginning of the intervention is time is spent with that young person, really going through the intervention so they know what to expect and really understanding what's important to them and what their goals are. And then at the end of the intervention, there's time to reflect on the intervention together and come back to those goals and give any feedback. And these interventions are currently being piloted, and we're really using that feedback to develop the content and the delivery of the interventions. Thank you. Yes, so as a service that's really focused on improving care and outcomes for autistic young people with eating disorders, it's been really important for us that we have included the views and ideas of people with lived experience. So as part of the Peace team, we have a number of experts by experience who contribute to the project in a number of different ways that kind of summarised on the slide there. And we also have a regular participation group for young adults with lived experience of autism and eating disorders. And we also have a regular parent and carer participation group. I'm now, if possible, going to hand over to Mollie, who's one of our experts by experience and is going to talk about her experience of working with the Peace Project.
So I suffered with it since the age of 12 and have been a part of services ever since. I was diagnosed with autism, which brought a lot of emotions for me and taken some time to process this new understanding of myself. But I've been involved with Peace for quite a few months now, and has really helped with like getting involved with all the projects in the aim of improving services and growing understanding around autism and eating disorders. I have taken part in webinars talking about various topics, regularly attending groups and discussing piece of work to give feedback on how certain things can be improved or changed that can be suitable for autistic people and service users. We also discussed various topics, questions that can get brought to the group from clinicians and professionals themselves to understand how to help individuals in various situations, which I think is important because we can share from our experience what can be the best to do at these points, which can be very helpful for both the professional and the young person. A recent project I've been involved with is with the video animation for Peace for the website. So we're able to watch the video and discuss what we liked, what we didn't, what could be changed to best suit autistic people, such as the words used, the colours, graphics, and how the information was captured. But the most important part about being involved in Peace for me is finally being able to have a voice when for so long I didn't feel like I had one, to be listened to and to be understood in ways that I can share my experiences of treatment, of services, and the things that did not go well for me, in hope that this can be changed to be more positive for others and have better outcomes. For me personally, I've lacked a lot of trust with services and not being able to engage well, but now being able to change around my experience where I can be working with services in such positive ways with a great support and connection that has been incredible for me to contribute to, as well as supporting my own recovery and actually helping me accept and learn more about myself as an autistic person whilst being involved with all the projects that Peace is doing. So yeah, but that's sort of how I've been able to participate in ways that have supported Peace in these projects.
Brilliant, thank you so much for sharing that, Mollie. Can we have next slide, please, Jo? Yes, so some of you may be aware the National Autistic Society offers accreditation awards for services and educational settings that are able to demonstrate a good awareness of autism and good practice for autistic people. And over the last year, the Peace team have been working with our CANS eating disorder services towards accreditation with the National Autistic Society. And it's a pretty thorough process. It begins with self-assessment. So with our local eating disorder teams, we've been carefully reflecting on examples of good practice within our teams, but also areas for development, and then making action plans around those areas for development. And then early in December, we have our formal assessment with the National Autistic Society. They're going to come into service, meet with different clinicians, review our resources and documentation, observe different kind of clinical practice, and meet with young people and families about their experiences of treatment with eating disorder teams. Yes, I guess if we do and are successful in accreditation, it means that we'll be the first CANS eating disorder services in the UK to have this accreditation. And it really is a symbol to young people and to families and to other key stakeholders that we are services that are absolutely committed to understanding autism and providing inclusive care for autistic young people with eating disorders and their families. Thank you.
Brilliant. So I think it's me again. I'm going to be quick because I think we've only got a couple of minutes left. So we just wanted to mention a project that is part of our delivery. So as Mollie and Kim have said, right from the outset, we set out to embed the voice of lived experience into project delivery, which mirrors the ethos and the achievements of the London group. And I think you'll all agree there's nothing more powerful than hearing narratives and insights of those who have their own experience of managing an eating disorder and accessing treatment in the context of being autistic. We're also really interested to learn from clinicians and carers as well. So this led us to design, and we're partway through delivery of a project, What I Wished I Knew, through which we hope to fully utilise lived experience and staff experience. And we hope that will continue to drive the innovation that PEATS sets out to achieve, and particularly in relation to early help. So, you know, what was it that you wished had been in place earlier on in your journey that we have a chance of acting on and learning from? Okay, so I think this is our last slide. There's a couple of others for information. So this is where we've got to. So we're currently the only site in England to pioneer this approach with children and young people services, and we have grown parts of our project into adult services where there's also a massive need. It's a high profile project, so we've had lots of interest in our learning and outcomes. So we've delivered presentations to a Scottish interest group, to NHS England. Other ICSs are quite interested in what we're doing and seeing the outcomes, and have been invited to speak at international conferences. So it's exciting and fast moving, and we really hope we can kind of drive further innovation in this area. And the project's also in keeping with emerging commissioning and best practice guidance. So the guidance to deliver good eating disorder care as well as neuro-inclusive practice is continually being refreshed and updated. And certainly the eating disorder specific guidance is a lot more focused on autism and reasonable adjustments for autism. It's been an amazing opportunity to embed lived experience into practice, and hopefully we've given you just a little bit of a flavour of that. It hasn't been without its challenges and learning. We've been trying to, it's involved navigating 2 provider trusts, 3 localities, which includes different HR, IT, finance, comms. Project initiation and recruitment is certainly challenging, as most of you will be familiar with. So it's really our clinical team only started. We had a first clinician in post at the end of year 1, and we didn't fully complete recruitment until the start of year 3. And there's other challenges with evaluation. So, you know, it took us a year to get NHS ethics for the projects I've just mentioned, but we are doing our best to continue. Our current hope is we've requested a 4th year project funding, which we hope will help us fully realise the benefits and outcomes that the project sets out to achieve. And just a final note, I think, you know, the wider impact and the potential for expansion and shared learning is huge. So I've mentioned adult eating disorders as a real area of need. There's of course other parts of the children and young people's pathway, so particularly thinking about inpatient care, but also the inclusion of wider neurodiversity and other mental health presentations. I think there's a lot of shared learning and potential for that. I'm going to finish there so we're not over time. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Fantastic work has been happening with the Peace Pathway, so it's brilliant to hear where things are up to.